because stuff moves so fast in today's world. You cannot wait for a whole year to let all this information out and engage your audience. So yes, events are certainly massive, I think, in 2023 and 2024, but the formats might have changed a bit, and I think that technology has certainly had a big role to play in that.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. Our guest today is Ike Kehal. Did I say that right, Ike?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Seth, for having me on the podcast. Looking forward to our session today.
I want everybody to know who's listening to this that not only is this a new episode of the Keynote Curators podcast, but is the charter meeting of the Bald Technology Event People Men of North America. So welcome to our first meeting. It took a long time for us to get our hair and makeup done, but Ike, you look terrific. Great haircut.
No, thank you so much, Seth.
Well, all kidding aside, it's great to have you here. I want to kind of get right into the deep end, right into the heart of the matter. You know, you're dealing with a very interesting aspect of events and conferences and people getting together. And the landscape of the event industry is evolving like any landscape of any industry, with AI, ChatGPT, work from home, hybrid workforce. Just the landscape of business and the future is here and now. I want to get your take on something. I'm going to put a hypothesis out there and just tell me where I'm wrong, where you might make some editorial changes or whatever. Events are becoming more prominent in organizations' system of marketing, of branding, of messaging, of attracting clients, of attracting their workforce. It's becoming related to as a vehicle, if you will, that is an all-terrain 4x4 type of vehicle that fires on all these realms and all these domains of an organization's structure, to the point where Time Magazine had made a little bit of a splash around the CEO, calling it Chief Events Officer. Talk to me a little bit about how you see that, the landscape evolving, the importance of events for organizations, and then tie it into specifically what you're doing in that world.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Seth. I think that's a great question. Yes, you're right. Events are certainly a very, very, very big part of any marketing organization and any company, out there in terms of strategy, how they work with their and engage their customers, as well as their internal workforce as well. So I think there's a few different factors for this. I think during COVID, certainly we had that not much of that interaction for a few years, and that's made us realize how important that interaction was. But then also on the other side, even post COVID, a lot of us are still working in remote situations and or doing a lot of stuff online. So I think events, the formats could be this one exactly right now. I mean, it's kind of some kind of an online version of our interaction and or in person. So I mean, I personally say that all events have a virtual component, which is pre-event, and then sometimes during the event it's virtual and or hybrid, and then post-event again goes back to virtual. So the technology has played a big role in being able to have more events in today's world. I think that's the first thing. But then the second thing for me also is the format of these events, right? So I think what I'm seeing, especially with our customers, and we've done hundreds of events in the past, year, I would say it's a lot of my customers are moving from only focusing on that big mega event to lots of interactions. So they might still have that mega event, but it's not like all eggs in that basket kind of thing. Like, let's just keep on all of our announcements until on hold. Let's keep all of product stuff on hold. And that's when everything will be unleashed to the world. No, because stuff moves so fast in today's world, you cannot wait for a whole year to let all this information out and engage your audience. So the point is, yes, have your mega event, why not? But then have a lot of smaller, more engaging, curated events, where could even be an invite only list, could be just a dinner, with their local customers. So right from that all the way to the mega event, keep the momentum going. So yes, events are certainly massive, I think, in 2023 and 2024, but the formats might have changed a bit. And I think that technology has certainly had a big role to play in that.
And if we're moving from all the eggs in one basket, and if my thesis is, events themselves are a vehicle, then the basket is not in one city on a certain date range, end of story. You're saying that, there is a longer timeline or a continuous timeline. Is that right?
Yes. Absolutely, Seth. I'll give you a small example. The
Please.
UN is one of our biggest customers, and inside the UN, the Climate Change Agency or that particular project is one of our biggest customers, right? So we work with them throughout the year for the past 3-ish, 4 years now. Where there is satellite events that happen all across the world. And I think this is a great format also to for just any event, planner or anybody out there, which is do satellite events throughout the world, okay, wherever your audiences are, have them get to know each other, because again, this is a climate change is a very, very strategic endeavor, I mean, for everyone. And you also understand that this is also a place where there's millions of different opinions, literally millions. Okay, so the thing is, like,
Literally.
you have, yeah, so you've got all these people coming together in little events throughout the year, which we enable. And then the conversation starts evolving, some agreements start happening, the networking starts happening, relationships start getting forged. And so people who all start with a million different opinions, it's all narrowing down. And that all culminates in their big, massive event, which they call COP at the end of the year. And last year was COP28 in Dubai, where, 200 countries came, 150 heads of state, and 70, 80,000 people in person, 40, 50,000 people online, 100,000 plus people engaged in that event. But again, hundreds of thousands of people engaged throughout the year, right? So
Yeah.
that's a great example of how to do it right, but also a great way of thinking. Like, even this is not some big tech organization, this is the UN, and all the countries have their own agendas of what they want to do and not want to do. So if you actually give people the avenues and the ability to have these collaborative experiences, you are able to get some consensus going. And there was some amazing agreements that were made, at the COP28 in the finale, around fossil fuels and so forth, where a record number of countries signed up to, kind of do some big measures around that. So anything can be done, but I think it all comes down to, get the people together. So this is not a one time thing. I mean, I understand back in the days of Steve Jobs, the big new Apple, iPhone unveil would happen once in a year, because that's a device. They don't do it every twice or thrice a year,
Right.
right? But now even Apple does multiple of these things a year, right? So, and everybody wait for the whole year, like, oh my God, what did they announce? So unless you're Steve Jobs and or Apple, whatever else, maybe you can still do some of those things. But I think engaging the community throughout the year, having touch points with them and involving them in your entire discussion. So when you meet at the final event, it's not something behind a closed wall. Everybody already has been a part of it. And you
Right.
actually end up signing big, massive, world changing things versus the average event is, hey, what do you do? All that should have been done 8 months ago, you know?
When you say satellite, do you mean people remotely logging in from all different locations, or there is a component where it's live in a theater, in a conference hall, in some physical location, that there are physical aspects to it, and then as well as people logging in and being able to participate and contribute remotely?
Yes. So there's both of them, Seth. I think all kind of depends upon what people are trying to do. I mean, especially with, I would say, Microsoft is one of our other customers. They do have a satellite event concept where there might be a big event going on, for example, in New York, and then they would have satellite events in Redmond where they'll collect customers and partners. So you kind of watch the keynotes together, some of the key, events, sessions together. And then after that, you do round tables with your local customers and partners, and then you have a networking thing going on. So kind of it's a good reason to kind of bring people together, right? So that, I think, is a format which I've seen becoming more and more popular, but certainly having remote attendees come in, we all know that's been happening for a few years now.
I think the rapidity, the velocity that was forced on us by COVID required us to really think in an artful way of how to foster meaningful connections, but virtually. I think pre COVID, you know, BC, before COVID, right?
Mhm.
There
Mhm.
was, first of all, just the facility with which people connected on video just wasn't an automatic. People just
Yes.
didn't think. Now it's a call, and you
Yeah.
kind of, it's call and Zoom or call and video are
Right.
synonymous, or you kind
Right.
of have to distinguish it. Are we
Mhm.
doing the phone or are we getting on
Right.
video,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
That's how
Yeah.
much it's infiltrated.
Mhm. Mhm.
But to be able to have a platform,
Mhm.
foster meaningful connections, and then the binary, the code, the coldness of technology,
Yeah.
the innate nature of that, how do you bring the warmth,
Mhm.
the community that is fostered, fomented in these big meetings, and have that arise, right? I
Mhm.
mean, there are components to your technology that do that. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about that?
Certainly, Seth. And I think you've touched, something very important here. The whole those phrases, Zoom fatigue, and you just said, the cold nature of technology, sometimes interaction and so forth. You tell me, have you ever heard TikTok fatigue? It's called TikTok. I mean, addiction. Okay, so the point
Right.
is, it's really not the technology. It's what you put
Or
out
the
there.
word doom scrolling, just
No,
that
no.
phrase is
Exactly. So people, I mean, like including myself, I have like, an app which tells me like you spend too much time on social media. So
right,
the
right,
point is
right,
like, it's how it is. So it's really not about the technology. We have no problem looking at screens all day. No problem at all. Okay. It's the content. And especially now that we live in the world of Instagram and TikTok and YouTube shorts and everything else, the event world needs to evolve. Okay, you cannot have 1 hour sessions anymore with 5 minutes for Q&A. Who is interested in that? No one. The point is like TikTok is 45-second videos. Instagram might do a little bit more. YouTube does a little bit more than that. Some podcasts keep your interest for 20, 30, 40 minutes. TED Talks, I think, is the best example of event format. They do not cross 20 minutes, 15 to 18 minutes,
right.
and they are the most watched content in the universe. Nobody gets sick of TED Talks. No one. Yes, the speakers obviously are world class as well, right? I understand that part. But the bottom line is, I think it comes down to it's not the technology, it's not watching a screen, it's the content. And I think if we involve, the audience, if we involve, the people who are supposed to be inside the rooms with us, it's on that virtual meeting or the audience, they will love to, be participating. So I think even like, I mean, again, you come from the speakers world. I have been talking more about that. The speakers job description slash responsibilities is completely changing and should change. So the
Yeah,
monologue format of speakers where they are just doing a monologue to a bunch of people for an hour, I don't think it's a great format. Versus, I think at events of any kind, the 100 level stuff should already been recorded, super easy and cheap to do that, and put it out there so that people already know what this person's all about, right? Could be
right.
even long form for that matter, doesn't matter, right? But when they actually come in person, so the prerequisite is taken care of. The subject matter we're going to talk about. You have the basics of it. Now, what you're going to do is the speaker is going to talk for those 10, 15 minutes, the TED Talk style, get you inspired and enthused. And then it's all about a workshop, a discussion, a dialogue, not that monologue, right? And I think speakers become more facilitators, moderators at that stage, right? And so that 1 hour of discussion with 15-minute one person speaking and then moderating the rest of the discussion with maybe even some questions that came in advance and so forth, moderation, how it works and so forth, right? So the point is, I think that those kind of events, those kind of sessions will certainly have people's attention.
Yeah, and it's a blend. What I'm hearing is it's a blend, right? You
Yeah.
need a robust, user friendly, amiable user experience technology,
Yes.
platform, apps, but the content, the human element has to be adaptable to that. And I agree, the commoditized nature of the keynote speaker now, the landscape is shifting as well.
Mhm.
That aspect of the event industry, sessions are shorter, but
Yes.
I think you hit on something where it's not just this massive name that's washing over on a
Mhm.
monologue for 40
Mhm.
minutes,
Mhm.
45 minutes,
Mhm.
35 minutes, 50
Mhm.
minutes,
Mhm.
which is, if you're a good storyteller,
Sure.
is
Yeah.
entertaining.
Yeah.
But in today's world, like like with the TikTok and the doom scrolling and the shorts and the
Yes.
Instagram and all that, the keynote speaker's responsibility is to provoke, to be a provocateur
Yes.
in the healthiest, most nutritive,
Mhm.
additive, positive gluten-free, organic
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
possible. But, to provoke, to generate curiosity, to get
Yeah.
the thoughts going. It's not just like, okay, now we're interacting. Turn to your partner and, hey,
Mhm.
Ike, what do you
Yeah.
do to
Mhm.
get your
Mhm.
hair looking great?
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's not like that. It's even
Mhm.
more. How do you
Mhm.
tie that into
Mhm.
the theme, the topic,
Right.
what people
Right.
are grappling with, what's
Absolutely.
important, the future we're
Mhm.
trying to create? I
Mhm.
agree and hear with what you're saying about the
Mhm.
keynote speakers'
Mhm.
responsibilities.
Yes, I mean those are the responsibility. Again, as you said earlier, right? They have to ignite that fire. They are not the
That's
fire.
right.
They are the spark. I mean, they have
That's
to
right.
ignite the fire. Like there's 5,000, 10,000, 1,000 people in that audience. These are not kindergartners. They have a lot to say, right? So the question is, how can we harness the collective intelligence of that entire cohort and not one person and or 10
Yeah.
people, the chosen
Yeah.
10%, right? So I think if the keynote speaker can do an amazing job at really igniting that fire in those people and give them those 10 ideas that they should really think about, I think all the other sessions can feed from that fire. And, we can
Yeah.
all collectively again sit around that fire and create, some legends. Yeah.
And to build on what you had said previously, Ike, it's that if we can have, whether it's satellite events, mini events, micro events prior, it's a quick 10-minute come in and there's going to be five concepts, three concepts that we're going to
Right.
really dive deep into in the big
Mm-hmm.
general keynote session. But here's a primer, or here's
Mm-hmm.
some basics to know so you can come with some work done or something to think about. You can do those building towards the event, which is what I've seen and what I recommend to my clients. It's not just bring in a speaker and maybe do a hello, I'm excited to see you in 6 weeks in Maui.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
we know that,
Mm-hmm.
this is happening in your
Mm-hmm.
industry and
Yeah.
I've been invited in. I'm going to be addressing these three specific things.
Yes.
Here's the first thing I want you to begin to
Yes.
think about so that when you come into the session, we've already started our
Absolutely.
conversation.
100%, Seth. 100%. There's a concept in education called the flipped classroom, where the lectures are online and you're in person. When you actually meet up in person, you actually discuss the stuff. You kind of like debate the stuff, right? I mean, that's
Mhm.
value, versus the lecture being in person, because then nobody's just sitting there. You could have just heard that lecture on a video, man. It's the same stuff. So the point is, I think the flipped classroom turned into a flipped event where, as you rightly said, it is that 100 level content all out of the way.
Yeah.
Because in most cases, if there's a keynote speaker, their 100 level content is all over the internet anyways. I don't need to spend 30 minutes of my time just listening to your 100 level because I've heard it so many times on the YouTube. So the point is, when you come there, we are done with your 100 level, and now we're going to talk about some deep stuff where you say, listen, here's what I think the overall framework of life should be. Great. But then when it comes particular to you guys, here's the five things you should really focus on. And so it's
Exactly.
very personalized and customized to that audience. I think that'll be a game changer.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been seeing the shifting sands, if you will. What's the meaning behind the name Social 27? I mean,
Okay.
why not Social 26? And just for our audience, you're the co-founder and the CEO of Social 27, and you named some of your great clients, the UN, Microsoft, United Airlines, Norwegian Cruise Lines. This started as a three-person startup in your
Mhm.
home office, and you've
Pretty much.
blossomed into, I think, 175 employees, and it's a pioneering event platform that really brings dynamic digital and hybrid communities together across the globe. Organizations are able to host these virtual events. And my phrase is foster these meaningful connections. So the name Social 27, why not Social 26?
Sure, certainly that's a good question. I get asked that all the time. So social, I mean, obviously, because I mean, right from the get-go, I mean, I used to work at Microsoft, right? So in the event business, marketing overall is about community. It's about social, right? I mean, that's the biggest element of any event out there. So social had to be in the name. Now finding anything with social with a .com was next to impossible. So I
Right.
was like, let's choose a number. 27 is the perfect cube, 3 into 3 into 3. It has a lot of significance from a numeric perspective, but it also is a birthday of some dear people in my life, including myself. So the point is, it's also that number just works that way for us. So that's what we came up on, and so far we've kind of kept it. Yeah.
Yeah, it works. And I love the numeric, the numerology, but there's also a personal significance,
Yeah.
which kind of keeps you grounded in there. While you're on it, I want to hear a little bit about your
Yeah,
story. You said you were in Microsoft and you've been in Seattle area, which is
yeah.
where this podcast finds you today for the longest period of your life.
Mhm.
Take us through quickly just the highlights and how we relate in the meeting industry to your career path and how you got to where you are today.
Certainly. So yes, I mean, I did, about 8 years in Microsoft. It was a global marketing role. Events were a huge part of it because any marketing campaign that we would do, I would run a lot of their events, again, all across the world. So in the US, obviously, Europe, Asia, and South America, and some of the Middle East events as well. So like, I used to be on the road 2 weeks out of 4.
Mm,
And that is during that time when there was two big pain points I had. Number one was the amount of money that we were spending and what we were getting in return. Because in some countries, the local, country managers would do a really good job getting the right people. In some other places, maybe not as much. So this was a lot of money being spent of people traveling all across the world and, venues and everything else. I mean, it's a Microsoft level quality, event. And so I was like, well, we could have done more. That scale wasn't there as much as I wanted. So the virtual aspect always interested me. Like, how can we add more technology to this thing? And the second thing for me was that I had a bunch of event teams working in. I could not go everywhere, so there was other events happening in smaller places where I could not
sure.
go. But I would be really, the biggest problem for me was to get data out of them. So it was like, okay, who came to the event? What did you guys talk about? Was it just like a session and wine and home? Like, because I
Right.
mean, what's the impact of the money that I sent to you guys to
Did
do
they
these
say they
things?
want to come back? Did they like
Exactly.
certain things? Did they not like certain things?
Exactly. And in many cases, it's the usual suspects, from those accounts who always show up for the event and they all kind of know each other. Did we get some new blood in there? Like, what was going on? So, like, getting data out was so difficult. And then being able to, just kind of pull that data together, analyze and see where are we getting the most amount of impact? Pretty much non existent. So, that was two pain points: scale and then ROI, which was the two major things for me, which I kind of set in my mind. And so when I left Microsoft, that was key on my mind is like create something which has the scale through technology and has the ability to have clear ROI, validated with data, right? So that's kind of what we set up to do. Left Microsoft, economy fell off the cliff, 2008. Boom. I was like, okay, great time to leave a nice corporate job.
Right.
Doesn't matter. We kind of kept working on our stuff, we did some consulting and so forth. We started doing more learning kind of stuff, I would say, more training and learning, because and that was a big component of the customers I had at that point in time. And then as we got into most of those things, we also tried our hand at a couple of mobile consumer apps, which did not do too much for us. I raised 5 million for one of them, spent about two, gave back 3 million to the investors. I was like, no, this is not going to work. I don't want to waste more of
Right.
your money, And
Right.
so kind of went back into the event world actually. And by that time, as you said earlier, said the technology has moved on to a point right now where what we are doing today is just natural to us.
Yeah.
Versus like 5, 6 years ago, the technology wasn't there. Streaming was very expensive. People aren't used to sitting in front of camera and so forth. Just the production expenses of putting anything together was really high. So people were skeptical. So as time went by, closer to 2017, 2018, Zoom and other of these, streaming services kind of started coming in. And we were like, this is that moment. We have this,
Yeah.
that the tide, in the lives of men, that Shakespeare, thing. It's like the tide is coming and we were ready. So we just set sail, and then immediately we got tailwinds from COVID. So we went from a 10-person company to a 250-person company at one point in time. And then we kind of like settled around in that 100, 150 range at this stage. Technology has helped us. And then just, the way the market is. So that's kind of been the bit of a journey for us over the last few years, I guess. Yeah. But
Yeah.
focus for us right now is certainly AI. And it's not just AI for the sake of AI, but to really help the events industry and the overall B2B campaign, focus workflows to really bring down the costs of doing things and the time that it takes for us to do all of this stuff. Yeah.
Incredible corporate background. You had your eyes open, learning mindset, growth mindset. You took the risk. Many people who are entrepreneurs think, oh, entrepreneur is the destination. No, that's just the name. The journey is taking the risk, using your creativity, using your gray matter. It's a competitive landscape, Ike. There's no two ways around it. There's the established players, there's big players, there's very niche players. What do you say to the business owner who's either established, midway through their career, starting out, and how you relate to knowing you're good at what you do, you have something valuable, you have your unique take on it, but that there's a lot of competition out there,
Certainly. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can't ignore it, but you can't give it too much fuel, right? So, how do you balance that as a business owner, somebody who's in the free market competing?
I think very valid question, especially in today's day and age where we are in the technology side of the house, but events and marketing being the market that we're in. But irrespective of any industry you're in, technology is a big piece of it. Like every industry is technology industry at this stage. If you're not using technology, then I don't know what you're trying to do.
Every industry. I mean,
Everything.
agriculture. Yeah,
So the
every
point,
industry.
so that's the brings us to the point where it's moving at such a fast pace. Okay. So we really have to keep a pulse on what is happening, right? So what has helped us over the last few years is the ability to continue to evolve with the customer's needs and to foresee some of the trends that are happening, and in many cases those trends all start in our normal daily personal lives and they make their way into business. The trend around smartphones, iPhones, all started as a consumer device for music and photos, and then it made into the enterprise, into the for email and secure apps and everything else. Same things happening with AI. Same thing has happened with personalization. Spotify, Netflix is what we do every day for many years. Now people are expecting the same experiences from their enterprise software, right? Which is like, why is it not personalized? Why doesn't it understand what I want? Why are you showing
Right.
me all this stuff? I don't care. So the
Right.
point is, keep a pulse on where the market is going, and the best way to do that is, and honestly, is to see what people love every day. And that is what's going to make it's going to have its ripple effects, and it's going to come to wherever you are. So be ready for that. I think that's what has kept us in touch. And being from a technology industry background, I think I'm very fascinated with the ability and the impact that you can create, with by using technology in a better way. I think so. That's why we do have a focus always on, kind of like looking into the future and bringing
Sure.
some of those experiences to our customers. But I said earlier, it's not about technology for the sake of technology, AI for the sake of, because it's AI. It really has to solve a real problem. It's
That's
not like,
right.
well, we have AI. Well, so what? What
Yeah.
problem does it solve? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Or it's no different than an event. You can have
Yeah.
great location, but
Yeah.
how is it serving the bigger picture?
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
whether it's in a sustainable manner or you really want to treat people, well, does it occur to them as a treat? Let me
Mhm.
ask you this, you keep your eyes
Mhm.
open,
Mhm.
whether, these are not your words, you're looking at your competition or just the whole landscape, if you will, the panorama.
Right.
And then you're informed by data.
Mhm.
And where do you often find that what you're seeing and what the data tells you is in harmony and sync? Or
Mhm.
is there often where you're like, oh my God, I'm
Mhm.
seeing that, but the
Right.
data is telling me something completely opposite?
Sure. No, it makes a lot of sense. And okay, I'll tell you. And you did mention a little about competitors and everything else, and I mean, I think when there's competitors, it's great because that means that there is something in this industry. If you're the only one, you should probably think
Right.
about it. It's like there's
Right.
nobody here. There's a reason for it.
Right.
And if you notice, like from centuries, right, there would be that this is the leather, market. Everything is leather
Right.
is here. So all those people come together. They all have competition with each other. But the point is, like, there's lots to learn from each other every day. And the customer, I mean, my laser focus is on the customer's needs. So I am not as worried and or don't spend too much time thinking about, how am I sizing up with my competitors. But
Right.
but if I put myself into the customer's shoes, they will go to my competitors also. So I need to know what my competitors have, and
Yeah.
if I have something similar, or if that's a need of my customer, what I can do about that, right? So
Yeah.
I think I learned a lot from my competitors. I mean, I watch my competitors on LinkedIn, everywhere else, and there is lots of amazing insights, that I get from them, and
Yeah.
in many cases I also comment and there's like, wow, that's awesome, great idea,
Right.
something of that kind.
Right.
So I think I think we all are trying to serve, the customers. There's enough in these industries for all of us to enjoy, so I think pitting ourselves against each other is really a waste of time. The goal is, so how can we get the industry overall move to the next stage, collectively, so that we all can have those bigger budgets like events always did, and be
Right.
able to have more for everyone. But I think biggest thing is to create more impact, right? I think that is a collective thing that everyone has to do together, anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really healthy outlook. I mean, in the keynote speaking world, it's extremely competitive.
Yeah.
And, I do look, I admire, I learn from what else is out there in the keynote speaking world, in the keynote speaking profession, as far as speakers and agencies and bureaus. And, there might be a moment where I borrow something, but it's my spin or my take or
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
aspect of it,
Mhm.
how I
Mhm.
frame it, or,
Mhm.
take it. You use the word spark,
Mhm.
breathing life into an idea
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then, kind of making it your own or owning it, if you will. Where do you see, and you can do this in 3 or 4 hours or less,
Mhm.
okay?
Mhm.
Where do
Mhm.
you see the future of events evolving?
I mean, I think for us, it's certainly efficiency, right? Because I mean, if you really think about it, events are cyclical and seasonal in nature, right? There's massive spikes in the spring, massive spikes in the fall, right? There's some stuff that happens, throughout the year, but those are big, massive spikes. So the point is, like, people get tons of business during that time, but then they have to also refuse business. If you're good, you're refusing business. You're like, I'm tapped out.
Right.
Why should you refuse business? First of all. And secondly, the point is that how can I help you scale more? So I think that's where a lot of the AI, generative AI, comes into the picture. Because what is events? Number one, content. Content development is the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to generative AI. Even if it shaves off, I'm not saying it's going to build all that content for you, but even if it helps you get save 25% of your time. Instead of 100 hours, you put 70 hours and 30% out, 30 hours saved. That's huge. When it comes to, when you scale it, multiply it, the effect is massive, right? And then the next thing is networking. I mean, let AI tools match people together. The
Yeah.
event owner knows everything about the buyers, the sellers, and everybody else. Okay. So I have all this data on me. Use that data, match them together, let them come to the event with 10 meetings already scheduled. Real
Amen
ROI
to
for them.
that. Yeah.
Like
Amen
versus
to
like a
that.
bunch of business cards and spray and pray, like, oh, I wish I find someone. No, the
Yeah.
wishing time is over. It's like we got to get down to business. And then the
Yeah.
third thing is the expo, the sponsors, and so forth. They want their leads. So AI tools can help them massively in that. Give them more presence pre-event. Make sure that they have the a longer time with the attendees, and they're able to build more of those leads and actually get deals done versus introductions at those events, right? So those are like the three different pillars of any event, and all of this can be done with AI solutions today. It's not a pie in the sky down the road. We actually help our customers do that. So the point is, maximize yourself, use these superpowers, don't be scared of them, because they're
Yeah.
not coming for your job. I mean, we talk about, is it going to eat your lunch? Yes, possibly. Or it'll buy you lunch, depends on how you use it.
Right. That's a great metaphor. I mean, it's optimizing. It's using it as a tool, and it'll free you up to be more creative, more thoughtful, take on new ideas. So I don't see it as a threat. I think that that's a great share, if you will, on how the events industry is evolving, and these efficiencies, matching people up is just so important. Ike, we're coming to the end of this conversation. It's been very rich. We like to finish off with something we call 20 questions. It's not technically 20
Right.
questions, it's a little bit more lighthearted. Rapid fire answers. Are you ready to go?
Let's go. Yeah.
All righty. What's something about you we wouldn't know from reading your resume?
Well. I would say, well, I think it's my focus on my family. There's not much I can mention in my resume and my
Yeah,
family. I think I'm
yeah,
at a certain point in my life where family is everything to me. I've I think balancing that and just really spending a lot of time. Like, I got my son's picture in the back there, so I think,
yeah.
yeah.
I
And I
got
would say
my
one more thing. My father
yes.
is an Olympian and a general, retired general. So, like, I think that nobody would know because it's not on my resume. But I mean,
Right.
I'm so proud of
Well,
him. Yeah.
in what sport is he in the Olympian?
Triple jump, triple jump. Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's a very skilled part of track and field.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
not for the faint of heart, You got to really get that timing. I would probably break my ankle on the first try. So
Yeah, so I
that's
mean, yes,
really
if there was
cool.
a column in the resume that said mentor, I mean, his name would be there, so we would have known that if in that case. Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, and family. other than your great hairdo, we're kindred spirits with our love and focus on our
Absolutely.
family. All
Okay.
righty. Ice cream, chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla, big time. Yes.
Vanilla.
Yeah.
Um, do you eat pizza?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Straight up cheese only or with toppings?
I like toppings. I'll be honest. But if I'm in New York, though, you know what? Straight up is just fine as well. Yeah.
What's the most frequently used app on your phone?
I would say certainly my email, my work email. But after I've
Yeah,
said personal apps, I would say I do like to keep a tab on TikTok and Instagram. So there's a certain time I allocate every day, for that purpose. Yeah.
right. Is the next destination that would be top on your bucket list?
I would say Buenos Aires if I could go there, like right behind you.
Ah,
I really want
yeah.
to go to
Wait,
Buenos Aires. Yeah.
Buenos Aires, come on down. There's room for everybody. What, if you're streaming or watching anything on a screen, what is it that you've recently watched or something that you could recommend to our audience?
I would say, TED Talks any day. I keep a tab
Yeah,
on TED Talks. I also like to watch a lot of stuff that comes out of Davos, in terms of what the world leaders are thinking. Sometimes
yeah,
it might be a little lofty, but I think TED Talks are more real. So I think I
yeah,
do my best to, watch some TED Talks. I
yeah.
mean, pretty much
And
everything is great there. Yeah,
the sheer variety is just amazing on
absolutely.
TED Talks. And I think we're going to leave it at that point. You're a lifelong learner, Ike. We met in the very virtual modern world of online direct messaging. I just love your style. I love your thinking, and I love your growth thinking and learning. And we're richer for it. So just thanks for being with us.
No, thank you so much, Seth, for having me on. It was such a pleasure. Yeah.
You're very welcome. And to our return listeners and watcher viewers, thank you for coming back, continuing to come back for these rich conversations. For our first time viewers and listeners, thank you for taking the time to join us. Share and share alike with your friends, your family, your postman, your milkman, your pharmacist, your grocer, your neighbor. We want to build and expand on this tribe at the Keynote Curators. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. You've been smarter for it.